Good afternoon. My name is Brandon Carter. I'm an application engineer with Ally PLM Solutions. I want to welcome all of you to the Ally PLM Lunch Bytes series. For those of you not familiar with our Lunch Bytes series, it's a series designed to briefly explore capabilities within NX that are often overlooked. Just for your reference, future sessions will be delivered once a month, usually the second Thursday of each month at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. Please check our website for upcoming Lunch Bytes topics and dates. Also, we want our Lunch Bytes to be valuable to you, so please let us hear your suggestions on future Lunch Bytes topics, and please let us know those via email. Also, if you have any questions regarding today's session, please just write them down and send them in an email. We have several of you on the line with us today, therefore you'll be in listen-only mode, to kind of reduce speakerphone feedback, etc. Last month we started our NX Lunch Bytes series with customizing the NX8 user interface, and today's topic is on synchronous modeling. Also, for your knowledge, we're going to break this topic up into two sessions. We're going to do half of the session today in the next 30 minutes, and then part 2 of the session will conclude on May 10th in our next Lunch Bytes. Our goal today is to give you some insight on how to use the synchronous modeling tools and to make your life easier. Alright, so our agenda for today, we're going to look at what is synchronous modeling. We're going to go through what the synchronous modeling tools are, and we're going to look at history versus history-free mode. And like I said, we're going to break this up into 2 sessions, so we'll get through about half of the synchronous modeling tools today, and we'll conclude the rest of them on May 10th. So first of all, where can we use synchronous modeling? There's kind of 3 areas that I kind of break it down to where we use this. First of all, we're going to look at using it on imported solids. Maybe we bring in a step file, a pair solid file, or maybe even a file, from another CAD system, excuse me, SolidWorks or PROLIM, etc. So those would be imported solids. We wouldn't have a history to that, so that's why I listed as no history, right? Because they're imported solids. Also, NX native parts, also with no history. On May 10th, when we conclude, we'll talk more about no history versus history mode inside of NX, but for right now, what you need to know is that we can do NX native parts and have no history on those. So kind of the same thing with the non-associative solid or the step file in respect to a history tree, and what you're going to notice when we use these synchronous tools, we're going to apply them directly to model faces. Also, NX native parts with history. What you're going to notice is these synchronous tools that we're going to look at today can be used on top or alongside other history-based commands. So, as I mentioned, the synchronous modeling tools are going to allow us to directly interact with the model, meaning when we use a tool like a move face, we're going to be directly selecting faces and moving them on the model. This also includes being able to use 3D driving dimensions. So just kind of on the bottom left, I'm sure most of us have seen this before. We import a step file or a neutral format, and we have this body come in, and that's an imported body, and we may even call this as some people refer to this as a dumb solid, right? Meaning we don't have a history. So how do we make changes to that? And that's where we're going to introduce the synchronous modeling tools. Here are just some screenshots of the synchronous toolbars. You see the synchronous modeling toolbar across the top. Different modify face, delete face. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here because obviously I'm going to show you how the tools work. So those are what we're going to be looking at over the next 2 sessions. So before we get started looking at the individual tools, I want to kind of just give you an overview of what we're looking at. First of all, you see I have this file in here, and it is just a body feature, right? We don't have a history tree to it. We imported this model. And right here is my synchronous set of tools, my synchronous toolbar. I also have these customized on my radio button. This is my radio button 3, so those of you, if you watched the first Lunch Bytes, I showed you how to customize your radio buttons. If not, tune into that replay on our website. But here I'm just holding down Control-Shift and my right mouse button, and you see I have a lot of the synchronous tools that I use a lot. So like I said, my goal for this particular example is just to kind of show you overall what we can do to the model, and then we're going to talk specifically about the tool. So first of all, I'm going to do a move face. Maybe I'm going to rotate the set of faces here. Notice here I have a selection manager that kind of helps me locate faces, right? It grabs a set of faces, so I didn't have to go through and click all those faces individually. Here I can go ahead and rotate these faces, and once again notice how I'm directly interacting with the model. If I want to rotate those 90 degrees, I went ahead and completed that move face operation even on that dumb solid or that body feature. Maybe I want to come in here also and delete some faces, kind of clean up the bottom of this part. I'm going to delete these little pockets down here. And also, like I said, the next session we're going to talk about the difference between history mode and history free. You see I've started off with history mode with a move face and a delete face on top of this body. But I can also switch to a history free mode, and maybe I want to do some shelling operations to give this a unique thickness. So maybe I want to offset or shell these, what kind of looks like handles, and we'll go ahead and pierce the top to 2 millimeters. Okay. While we're looking at that, let's go ahead and move another face. Maybe I want to rotate this face to kind of open this up a little bit. And notice with the move face command, I have distance, angle, and we'll talk about a few of these as we go, but I'm using kind of the generic distance angle, which means I can manipulate this little wheel. If I want to rotate, notice how I changed the plane for my rotation angle. And as I start to rotate this face, you see that obviously it instantly updates. The other thing that we're going to talk about is face finder. So it's going to maintain design intent for me, meaning if I select symmetry, notice how it's also rotating the face across from it as well. So maybe I want to go ahead and rotate that 30 degrees. So I'm just using a move face operation. Maybe I want to reuse some data or faces inside of here. I'm going to go ahead and copy this rib. Notice the selection manager helps me grab those rib faces, and I'm going to pull that off, and notice how I have paste copied. So as I drag that, it's going to go ahead and kind of boolean that to the model, or paste them, so to speak. Notice how it also extends it over, to make sure that that can maintain a solid based on my selection. The next thing we want to do is I'm going to come in here and move some of these faces, right? Maybe I want to move this up, complete the move. Now right now I've moved this face of this set of ribs up, and they're no longer coplanar to this face. What I can do is I can come in here and grab my move face, and I showed you how to move a delta value, but I can also just right click on the end of my arrow and say snap to object and say, make that height. So basically I've put those faces back to being coplanar using the move face command. A couple other things for this example. I mentioned we can use 3D driving dimensions. So I'm going to come in here and grab some linear dimensions. Earlier I was just doing a move face and kind of dragging. Here you see I can actually put a dimension and have some of my face finders, right? So I move the offset face as well. And notice I can drag that and actually drive that with the dimension. Maybe I know the distance between those needs to be 20 millimeters. I'm also going to grab another linear dimension, and I'm just dimensioning between the two cylindrical faces on those mounting boss. And what I'm going to do is actually also turn on coaxial, which will also grab the cylindrical faces, and maybe I want to maintain symmetry about that dimension. So notice as I drag that, it's grabbing the inside cylindrical face, which I selected with the dimension, and also the outside cylindrical face because of my coaxial face finder. It's maintaining that design intent. And maybe I want that to be 54 millimeters across. Maybe also I want to add a radial dimension. I can come over here and find other cylinders with equal radius. So notice I can drag that. Maybe I want that to be 10 millimeters as a radial dimension. And finally, maybe we want to resize some blends. I'm sure everyone's come across this. We have an imported model, and I just want to change the radius of that blend. So maybe I want to make this 2 millimeters. Come in here and select this other chain. Maybe I want to make that 3 millimeters. And you see there we have the results. Okay. So like I said, my goal of this little demo here is just kind of give you an overview of what we're going to be looking at the next couple of sessions. So now let's look a little more detail about the actual commands. So we're going to look at, and I'm going to go through these slides kind of quickly. I just want to point out what we're going to be talking about. We're going to look at the move face command. All right, and you see that we have the face finder, which you've been introduced to, and you'll see a little more detail coming up. Whether we move coplanar faces, etc., symmetry, maintain that design intent basically. It's very important to be able to maintain that design intent, especially if it's an imported model where we don't have the history or the history of that design intent. Also, you're going to notice I was using the selection filter. If I come in here and select a face, this tool allows me to grab more faces and grab them very quickly. For example, if I grab adjacent faces up here in the upper right hand corner, or maybe I want to grab a boss or a pocket faces, notice how it selects all the faces for me. And the same thing here, this pocket, notice I select one face, it'll grab all those faces in that chain for me. Like I said, with the Face Finder, the biggest thing you need to know about Face Finder is it is used to maintain that design intent. Right? It picks up geometric conditions, it looks for things like coplanar faces or flush faces, symmetry across the model, holes or cylinders that have an equal radius, coaxial conditions, tangencies, etc. Okay. And there's also a little shortcut. I've been selecting them out of the dialog box here with Face Finder on the left, but there is a little shortcut at my mouse location to be able to turn those on and off. Also, as we're moving these faces, there's different ways that it can be calculated for how the material adds or removes depending on the face. So you see there's an automatic overflow behavior. So it extends the modified faces, and tries to make, everything change the least, meaning that the smallest change of volume or area, it'll try to calculate to maintain that. We do have individual overflow behaviors. For example, if you have extend change face, extend incident face, extend cap face, and I'd rather just show you those live, but you see kind of roughly by the illustration. And these are actually the tooltips. The screenshots are from tooltips inside of NX. So if I hold over top of that option, I'll get that tooltip, and they do a pretty good job of explaining what's going to happen as I move that. We can also pull a face, basically add and remove material to a region. We can do an offset region, basically an offset face, right? Whether it's a cylindrical face, planar faces, any face or region, we can offset that, which you'll see here in a minute. Resize face, a very common example would be that cylinder back there. Remember, we don't have a history of how to change that, so I can do a resize face, grab that cylindrical face, and make that change to a new diameter. And the last one for the face, kind of the face movement tools, is replace face. Maybe I want to give it some kind of sheet body or contoured surface, and I want to replace faces of the solid to that surface. It's a very, very handy tool. So let's go ahead and take a little deeper dive look at those tools. I'm going to go ahead and open a brand new blank template, and let's actually import a Parasolid file. So we know that this will not have a history, right, because it's coming from Parasolid. So obviously this was made in some other CAD system, and what we want to look at, first of all, if I come up and grab a move face as I did earlier, I'm a very graphical person, so I like using the handles on the wheel and actually dynamically move those up. Notice if I come over here and turn on coplanar, notice how it picks up that those other three faces existed in the plane, and now they need to follow along for the ride to maintain design intent. If I turn off that and turn off symmetry, notice I have symmetry to the back of the part, kind of about the base or absolute coordinate system. And what the offset's doing, if I select the offset, notice the bottom face underneath it. As I move that face up and down, it's maintaining an offset between those, basically kind of parallel faces, so to speak, right? Okay, so that's the move face. Let's talk about the overflow behavior. If I select this face over here and I start to pull this out, over here is the overflow behavior. So notice how it's set to automatic. So automatic in this case is going to do the extend change face. Notice as I pull that out how it's merging with that pocket, that cutout down there. If I change this to incident face, notice how the cutout is actually what's driving the shape as it merges with it. Okay? And then finally, if I do an extend cap face, what it's going to do is it's going to keep that face kind of rigid. In this case, it's going to hover over top of that cutout. So the biggest thing is I can come down here and very quickly go through my different options to get the result I want for how I move that face. The next one is pull face. So it's just like it sounds. Let's go ahead and give this a little different shape. Maybe I want to draw a profile across here on this face, and maybe I'll do something like divide this face, so I can select this as individual entities. So I just kind of split that face up. So if I come in here and do a pull face, I can select that region. I can either add material, maybe I want to bring that up 0.8, or maybe I want to push that region down. So you notice the pull face is exactly like it sounds. The next one is the offset region. Let me go ahead and switch over here to another example like we saw on the slide. If I come in here and grab an offset region, you see I can select multiple faces, and just like it sounds, do an offset. It will pick up my face finder, symmetry, etc. Also, cylindrical faces, I can offset those cylindrical faces. Notice I can offset that inward or out. So it's very, very easy to use. All right, the next tool is the resize face, as we saw on the slide. So maybe I want to change the diameter of that cylinder. Notice right now the diameter is 1 inch. If I want to make that 3/4 of an inch, I can just type it in, and notice how quickly it changed that, right? And remember, we don't have a history on that. The final tool in this flyout is replace face. So the example I said, maybe I want to create some kind of sheet body or surface for those top faces to take the shape of. So for example, I don't want a line. Let's go ahead and do a spline curve. So I'm going to build some kind of B-spline curve like that and just extrude that across. We'll flip the direction. Also notice how I'm not extending that all the way across. I could, but notice the algorithm will solve. I don't have to. So if I come up here to replace face, I'm just going to pick the faces of my solid that I want it to take the shape to. Pick the face I want it to replace to, and notice how those faces take the shape of that sheet body or that surface. I also have an optional offset, so notice how inside the replace face command I can offset that as well. Okay, and let me just quickly hide that body so you can see the results. So that's a very, very handy tool. Love replace face. The next group of of tools we're going to use or go through quickly here are the resize tools. So very, very straightforward. I want to resize a blend. I can select the blend, give it a new value. Very important here, reorder blends. Think about, bringing in this imported model. I don't have which blend come first. How do I reorder those? In native NX or a history-based system, I could reorder the features, how they're calculated. But if it's history-free, or I don't have a history, how would I do that? So I'm going to show you how the reorder blends command works. Also, just like resize blend, we have a resize chamfer and also a label chamfer. And you may be wondering, well, why have a label chamfer? But I'll show you exactly where we would use that. All right, so first of all, if I come in here and resize a blend, you already saw an example of that. Notice how I have it set to connected bin places for my selection rule. So it grabs that continuous chain. And if I need to make that 0.35, I go ahead and made that change. Over here, back here on this back pad or material, if I come in here and I want to reorder the blends, notice how I can just select that corner patch where they intersect, and notice how it gives me the alternate solution for how those blends would be calculated just by selecting that corner patch. The next one down is resize chamfer. I do have a chamfer on here. If I come in here, I can select that chamfer. I can edit it as a symmetric offset, so it's the same in both directions. Asymmetric offset, offset an angle just like you have in native NX. But if I want to do a symmetric offset and make that 0.5, notice how I've made that change. Now, where does the label chamfer come into play? So first of all, before we look at the label, if I come in here and select this face, and I just want to move this face up, notice how the chamfered face is not maintaining, right? We brought this in from a neutral format parasolid, so it doesn't really know that the face is a chamfer. Now, the one on the left side, it is a chamfer because we just got through resizing it, so it knows it's now a chamfer. So what we can do with the label chamfer, it's very handy. I can come in here and just select that chamfer face, and basically I'm just marking it as a chamfer. So once I've marked those as a chamfer, you see as I start to pull that face up, notice how it brings the chamfers along for the ride and maintains that that face is a chamfer. It's a very, very handy tool. And maybe I want that to be, whatever value. Maybe 1/2 inch. All right. So those are the resize tools along with the label chamfer. Another one here, kind of by itself, is delete face. So delete face is very, very handy. We can obviously, like it sounds, delete faces and it'll heal and stitch the model to maintain our solid condition. It's also, I put a little note down there, it's a handy way for users to clean up geometry for use in FEA or analysis. Maybe we want to create simplified versions of that. So very quickly here, the delete face. I'm going to come up to the delete face. It's the one with the X through it. I'm going to go ahead and select that entire pocket and delete that. Maybe I'm going to come over here and delete this little boss, this little cylinder. I'm going to come over here and delete the holes. Notice I'm just selecting the geometry and deleting it. Maybe I want to window select some faces to get a little larger select set. Delete that. Maybe I also want to delete that chamfer. So the delete face is very easy to use, but it's very, very powerful. All right, the last little section we're going to talk about before we break, once again, Lunch Bytes is a 30-minute session, and like I said, we'll conclude on May 10th. I want to talk about reuse in geometry. So reuse, and remember, we're looking at faces, right? We're directly interacting with the model. So we have tools like copy face, so if I want to replicate, in this case, maybe these cylindrical holes. Also notice I have an option selected to paste the copied faces. I mentioned that earlier. So we have copy face, we have cut face, and we also have paste face. All right, copy would make a copy, cut would cut the one instance, and basically paste it, just like your cut, copy, and paste commands do inside of Microsoft Office. Okay. The other thing we want to do is be able to mirror a face. So I want to mirror a set of faces over to the other side in this case. And also I want to be able to pattern a face. So I can do a rectangular pattern, circular pattern. I can do a little bit of a mirror inside the pattern as well. And I'll show you how these tools work as well. All right, let's go ahead and just bring in a new file. Go ahead and start a new file, and let's import another body, another parasolid here. Once again, it's just a body. I don't have a history tree of how this was built. So the first thing I want to do, maybe I want to replicate a couple of occurrences of that hole or that cylindrical face. So I'm going to come up here and just grab my copy face command, and I'm just going to start to drag that over. And notice I have the option set to paste copy faces. So in this case, it's going to paste it on the fly. So if I want a 1/2 inch offset between those, excuse me, I can go ahead and copy those. I'm going to keep the copy command alive, and I'm going to select both these faces. And just as we mentioned earlier, the distance angle, I can click on that little wheel, that distance angle wheel, and I can change the orientation of my wheel. Notice by selecting the little handles, maybe I want to move in the X direction. Notice how I'm just clicking the handles inside that wheel. So if I want to pull that off a 1/2 inch as well. So notice very quickly I just replicated that data. Here in a minute we'll come back and pattern that as well. The next thing, and like I said, cut and paste, are your typical copy, cut, and paste commands, just like you use inside of Microsoft Office products. I'm going to go ahead and mirror face. I'm going to use my little selection manager to help me grab all the faces inside of that pocket. Notice how they all highlighted. I'm also going to add that hole to my select set, and I'm just going to mirror that about the center plane. So when I mirror that about the center plane, obviously if I come back now and move a face, right, I can pick up symmetry across the part. So if I move that face, notice how the face across from it is moving as well. Also, maybe I want to come in here and rotate this face. Notice how I selected the face. I can drag the orientation of my little wheel up to the corner, and I can drag that. And once again, if I turn back on symmetry, you see how it's updating both sides, right? It's maintaining that design intent, right? Remember, I mirrored it. Okay. Finally, here for the reuse tools, if I come in and I select the pattern face, I'm going to come in here and I want to pattern that set of 4 holes. Okay, and I'm going to do a rectangular pattern. Like I said, you can do a circular pattern or a mirror inside this command. I'm going to specify my X direction. So I'm just going to come in here, and helps if I grab the command or the align item, right? And I select the edge. Maybe I want this to be the Y, and I can flip the direction, right? If I want to flip the direction, maybe if in my X distance I have 2 inches, my Y distance I have 2 inches, and I have 3 occurrences of those 4 holes. So 3 occurrences in the X, 3 occurrences in the Y. You see maybe a little different pattern functionality. There's some new patterning enhancements with NX8. I don't know if you've noticed those yet or not. Probably down the line we'll do a Lunch Bytes on the new patterning functionality. It's very, very powerful, very, very cool. So in this case, we've reused data, right? We did a copy off more occurrences. We've mirrored geometry, mirrored faces to the other side, and then we created a pattern. All right, that wraps up for today's session. Like I said, they're 30-minute sessions. We'll conclude with the rest of the tools and talk about history versus history-free on May 10th. As always, replays of our Ally PLM Lunch Bytes can be seen on our website. You just come over our website, go to Lunch Bytes, and select our NX Lunch Bytes to get the replay. Also, I don't know if any of you have Android phones, but we do have an Android app on the marketplace. And if you guys know anything about the little barcode scanner down in the bottom right, you can scan that barcode and it'll take you right to the app so you can download it. But anyway, if you don't have a barcode scanner, you can go into the Android market and search for Ally PLM. And what that app does, it just takes you to replays of our lunch bites and also to our website. So if you do have a phone, you want to check it out, it is there to do so. Thanks for your time. Once again, remember that part 2 of the synchronous modeling session will conclude on May 10th. I just want to remind you of that. We had too much material to do in one 30-minute session. Just as a mentionable item, we have some upcoming training offerings, our Essentials for NX Designers, which is our fundamentals class, 5-day class. See, we have a couple at the end of the month in July. If you want more information on that, go to our website, allyplm.com, and go to the training section. If you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you for your attention this afternoon. I hope you found this session informative. Once again, please email us your suggestions for future Lunch Byte topics. Also, email us any questions you may have had during this session. We appreciate your time, and let us know if you have any questions for our technical support team. You see our information on the screen as well. That's why we're here. We're here to help. And once again, I know I'm beating it in the ground. Remember, our next Lunch Byte sessions, we're going to continue the synchronous modeling discussion on May 10th. Thanks, and have a great afternoon.